and welcome to No Wonder, or welcome back. In this show, we discuss all things women. In today's episode, we will be having an insight on the role of feminism in philanthropy. This episode is a bit of a special one because it is the reason why No Wonder exists in the first place. In fact, during my last semester, while I was doing my bachelor's degree, I followed a class on the many faces of philanthropy, where one of the assignments was actually recording a podcast episode of 10 minutes on a topic in the field of philanthropy. I chose feminism, and this episode was the result. So the content you'll hear shortly is therefore my work remastered for No Wonder. First thing, as usual, is to define our terms. Feminism is in short the belief in equal rights and opportunities for all genders. Whereas philanthropy, on the other hand, is the act of giving time, resources, or money to promote the welfare of others, especially done by charitable organizations. Feminist philanthropy has a long and rich history. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, feminists like Susan Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton used philanthropy as a tool to advocate for women's rights and suffrage. In more recent years, feminist philanthropy has expanded to include support for a wide range of issues affecting women and other marginalized groups, such as reproductive rights, economic justice, and racial equality. But let's see the history of Madame Anthony first. Susan B. Anthony was a prominent American suffragist and social reformer who played a key role in the feminist philanthropy movement. She was born in the 1820s and has lived through the 19th and early 20th centuries. She was born in a Quaker family, and she committed to social equality, collecting anti-slavery petitions at the age of 17. Just as general knowledge, a Quaker family refers to a family that follows the religious principle and practices of the Religious Society of Friends, commonly known as Quakers. Quakerism is a Christian denomination that emerged in England during the mid-17th century as a religious movement emphasizing simplicity, equality, and inner spiritual experience. The key characteristics include also silent worship, non-violence, community involvement, etc. Going back to Susan Anthony, one of her many contributions to philanthropy was her work as a leader of the suffrage movement, which advocated for women's rights to vote in America. She and other feminists used philanthropy as a tool to support their cause and raise awareness about women's rights. For example, Anthony and other suffragists used their own money to fund publications of pamphlets, newsletters, and other materials to spread their message and mobilize support. According to Wikipedia, in the 1851, Susan Anthony met Elizabeth Cady Stanton, becoming lifelong friends and collaborators in social reforms, particularly women's rights. Together, they founded the New York Women's State Temperance Society, after Anthony was denied the opportunity to speak at a temperance conference due to her gender. During the Civil War, they established the Women's Loyalist National League, which conducted an enormous petition with nearly 400,000 signatures advocating for the abolition of slavery. After the war, they started the American Equal Rights Association, fighting for equal rights for both women and African Americans. Together, Susan and Elizabeth also published the women's rights newspaper called The Revolution in the 1868, and in 1869 they founded the National Women's Suffrage Association, which later merged into the National American Women's Suffrage Association in the 1890s, with Anthony as driving force. Anthony, Stanton, and Matilda Jocelyn Gage collaborated on the 6-volume book titled History of Women's Suffrage. Although their interests diverged later, they still remained close friends. In 1972, Anthony was arrested in New York for voting. This trial gained significant attention, of course. In 1978, she and Stanton played a vital role in introducing the Susan B. Anthony Amendment to the Congress, granting women the right to vote. The amendment was eventually ratified as the 19th Amendment to the US Constitution in the 1920s, a lot of time later. Anthony traveled extensively in support of women's suffrage, giving as many as 75 to 100 speeches per year and working on so many state campaigns. She worked internationally for women's rights, playing a key role in creating the International Council of Women, which is still active today. Feminist philanthropy helps to address the systematic inequalities that prevent marginalized groups from achieving their full potentials. And here are some examples of systematic inequalities that can be faced, and some of them we already discussed them in previous episodes. First of all is education, since marginalized communities often have limited access to quality education due to factors such as underfunded schools, inadequate resources, and discriminatory practices. This lack of educational opportunities can perpetuate cycles of poverty and limit future career prospects. Another is employment and wage gap, since marginalized groups face employment discrimination, unequal pay, and limited access to leadership roles. Think also of healthcare disparities, since access to quality healthcare is often unequal for marginalized groups, leading to disparities in health outcomes. Also, environmental justice, as particularly communities of color and low-income population often face environmental injustices. They may bear a disproportionate burden of pollution, lack of access of green spaces, and environmental hazards, affecting their health and well-being. And lastly, financial services. Marginalized groups may have limited access to traditional financial services, such as banking and credit. This lack of financial inclusion can hinder opportunities for economic advancement and wealth accumulation. As you can imagine, addressing these systemic inequalities requires comprehensive efforts at the individual, community, and policy levels. It involves also recognizing and challening ingrained biases and advocating for policies that promote equality and inclusion. Additionally, supporting organizations and initiatives that uplift marginalized communities can contribute to breaking down these barriers and creating a more just and equitable society. All that being said, feminist philanthropy can help challenge and dismantle systems and structures that perpetuate inequality, such as patriarchy and gender-based violence, or GBV for short. As a recall for anyone listening, patriarchy is a social and political system in which men hold more power and authority than women. This system can manifest in many ways, including through cultural norms, laws, and institutions. Gender-based violence refers to violence that is directed against a person based on their gender. This can include physical, sexual, or psychological violence, and can take many different forms, such as domestic violence, sexual assault, or harassment. GBV disproportionately affects women and other marginalized genders, and it is often perpetuated by systems of power and inequality. Many organizations and advocates work to address and prevent GBV through education, advocacy, and support services. There are many ways that individuals and organizations can engage in feminist philanthropy, and here are a few. Donating to a women's rights organization, since there are many organizations around the world that work to promote the rights and well-being of women and girls. By donating to this organization, feminists can support their work and help them continue to make a positive impact in the communities. Also, volunteering your time to support a cause that promotes gender equality. Many organizations working on gender issues rely on volunteers to help carry out their work. By volunteering your time and skills, you can help make a difference and support important causes. You can also think of investing in companies that have commitment to diversity and inclusion. By investing in said companies that prioritize diversity and inclusion, feminists can support businesses that are working towards an inclusive world. Think also of supporting organizations that will work to address gender-based violence. There are many of them that try to prevent GBV, such as domestic violence shelters and rape crisis centers. By supporting them, you can help provide critical support and services to survivors of abuse. And lastly, think of advocating for policy change. Many feminists engage in advocacy work to promote policy change that advances gender equality. This can include lobbying for legislation, participating in grassroots campaigns, and raising awareness about important issues. What are the challenges facing feminist philanthropy today? Like any other form of philanthropy, it faces its own sets of challenges. One of the biggest is the lack of funding and resources available to organizations working on gender issues, because it can make it difficult to effectively carry out their work and make the changes they seek. Other challenges may be limited public awareness and understanding, since many people may not be aware of the importance of feminist philanthropy and the issues that it addresses, and it can make it therefore harder to raise funds and support for their work. Or even resistance and backlash, as some people may resist or oppose the feminist philanthropy and its goals that it's seeking to achieve. This can include pushbacks from political social groups or from individuals who hold opposing views. And also limited representation and diversity within the feminist philanthropy movement, since it may not always be as representative of the diverse perspective and experiences of marginalized groups. It becomes therefore harder for them to have their voice heard and their needs addressed. Overall, feminist philanthropy faces a range of challenges that can make it difficult to effectively carry out its work and achieve its goals. However, despite all, many feminists remain committed to using philanthropy as a tool to promote gender equality and advance the rights of marginalized groups. Let's sum up what we saw today. The goal of today was to have an insight on the role of feminism in philanthropy. We highlighted historical contributions of feminist leaders, such as Susan Anthony and Elizabeth Stanton, who used philanthropy to advocate for women's rights and suffrage. The episode emphasized on the importance of feminist philanthropy in addressing systemic inequalities faced by marginalized groups, such as limited access to education or employment discrimination. And we also mentioned how feminist philanthropy challenges systems like patriarchy and gender-based violence. We saw examples of feminist philanthropy in action, including donating to women's rights organizations, volunteering for gender equality causes, investing in diversity-focused companies, and supporting initiatives against gender-based violence. Challenges facing feminist philanthropy were also addressed, such as the lack of funding, limited public awareness, and resistance from opposing views. In conclusion, feminist philanthropy plays a critical role in promoting gender equality and advancing the rights of marginalized groups. By supporting organizations and initiatives that work towards these goals, we can help to create a more equitable world for all people. As usual, this is all for now. It was a short and sweet little episode to combat this summer's heat. I'd like to thank you for joining me today, and I hope you'll tune in again for our new episode next week. In the meantime, don't forget to follow our social media accounts and share the episode. See you super soon. Bye!